Good morning to you and welcome back to Al Jazeera America. San Antonio Mayor Julian Castro is reportedly President Obama's top pick for the next Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Castro would replace Sean Donovan, who would take over as Director of the Office of Management and Budget. Now, Castro and his Congressman twin brother Joaquin are both seen as rising stars in the Democratic Party. The White House has not yet confirmed those moves. That's first up in our weekend politics segment. And in New York, we have Miss Tara Dowdell, a Democratic strategist and former aide to New Jersey Governor Jim McGreevey. And over in Pittsburgh, we have Lenny McAllister, conservative political commentator and former U.S. congressional candidate himself. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you.
Good morning.
San Antonio's Mayor Julian Castro as the next Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Is this the Obama administration's way of rescuing him from Texas Hold'em? In other words, protecting him from the Republican politics of Texas so that he can, in fact, continue to be this rising star in the Democratic Party?
Well, President Obama has been very interested in Julian Castro for quite a while. And actually, he spoke at the Democratic National Convention, the last Democratic National Convention. And he was the first Latino to have a prime speaking role, to have the prime speaking role. So I think that there's no question that Julian Castro is someone who has a very bright future ahead of himself. He's accomplished a lot. He was elected to council at age 26. So I think he'd be an asset to the Obama administration. It doesn't just help Julian Castro, it also helps President Obama by bringing him into the fold and bringing him into the administration.
So then, Lenny, will a Democrat ever be elected in Texas? I mean, where does he go from here?
A Democrat will be elected in Texas, but it won't be a Castro. I think what's going on with this is the same way that they did with my former classmate at Davidson College, Anthony Fox. You're putting them in federal positions so that by the time 2016 comes around, you have these young politicians that are no older than about 45, 46 years old. Anthony Fox can go back to his native North Carolina and possibly challenge Pat McCrory for the gubernatorial race in North Carolina when that state is a purple state, and then Castro can possibly be a VP candidate in 2016 and make Texas very interesting with Hillary Clinton and Castro on the ticket. This is a way to develop young talent, something that the Republican Party does a very poor job of, in contrast, unfortunately.
Okay, so you mentioned 2016, Lenny, and even the Republicans' role in that. Now, a few weeks ago, we talked about the historic nature of potentially having two women on the ticket, but what about a Clinton-Castro ticket? I mean, Tara's saying this would be a good idea, but do you think, Lenny, that this would be the perfect political play for those Democrats?
I mean, for 2014, it would seem that way. It would seem 2 years ahead. It would be great because you can make Texas purple, make it competitive. You can also then go to North Carolina where there's a big Latino population, make that competitive. You can go to Florida, make that competitive. Now, all of a sudden, these purple states, ones that used to be solid red that are now purple, are now areas that the Republicans have to focus on. And then from there, states that are already swing states would likely lean Democrat once again. This is something that could be a major problem for my party in the next couple of years.
All right, Tara, let's talk about those competitors. In fact, Karl Rove versus the Clintons. By midweek, Rove was backpedaling on a story about him questioning Hillary's health, suggesting she had brain damage. Now, her husband defended her, and let's take a listen to what he had to say.
First, they said she faked her concussion. And now they say she's auditioning for a part on The Walking Dead. I mean, you know, whatever it takes.
All right, now I had to chuckle when I saw that. And Rove can spin it any way he wants, Tara. But given that Hillary will be almost 70 years old in 2016, was that a bit of a low blow?
It was definitely a low blow, and it was ridiculous. And unfortunately, as President Clinton stated, we can expect to hear more of this kind of talk. They're trying to raise an issue of her age and her health and trying to put a chink in her armor because Hillary Clinton is looking very strong right now. She's very well positioned. There's no question about it. But I think he, as typical Republicans overplaying their hand, they already have a problem with women, and they're making an issue of Hillary Clinton's age primarily because she's a woman. You have not seen this kind of talk, save for much older male Republican candidates. You have not seen this kind of talk surround men the way it surrounds women. And you would think at a time when the Republican Party recognizes that it has a problem with women, that it would temper this kind of talk. And this is not the first thing that they've done, and it will not not be the last thing, but I think that if they continue to level these kinds of nasty attacks, unwarranted attacks, unsubstantiated attacks, that the public will see through it, and it will ultimately hurt Republicans, as it has in the past with comments about legitimate rape and all of these other egregious statements that you see coming from the party.
Lenny, I see you shaking your head. Do you agree with that? Do you think the Republicans have a problem with women?
This is a great play to get Democratic women and independent women ginned up, but this has nothing to do with Hillary Clinton being a woman. This has nothing to do with misogyny. It has to do with two things. Number one, Hillary Clinton seems unbeatable at this point in time, so you have to start putting chinks in the armor. That's why Karl Rove has done that. And number two, her last name is Clinton. How were the Republicans towards President Clinton during much of the 90s? What, if you remember, we just talked about Monica Lewinsky's not too long ago. What transpired during that whole fiasco? The reason why they're going after her is because she seems to be the preeminent nominee at this point in time. It's already pretty much been ordained. They think that they have to go after her now, and it's going to take 2 years to muddy her up, if you will, to give Republicans a chance. This has nothing to do with her gender.
Tara?
I completely disagree with that, and I think there's a record, on the record, there's so many statements that have been so egregious, so over the line about women, women's bodies, and also the statements about women's bodies have been just crazy. When Todd Aiken said that a woman's body has a way of shutting things down.
We're not talking about
if they're raped. But that has been, but the problem for your party is that there are a lot of folks out there making these kind of statements, and they're specifically
But these are mutually exclusive.
Towards women. No, it's not mutually exclusive.
Why do you think they're mutually exclusive?
Because Hillary Clinton's a woman. Where was Karl Rove when older men have run? Where was he making these statements about older men? Just where were those statements?
Were those older men at the top of the pack when it comes to somebody winning the White House in 2 years? That's what we have to look at. Am I saying that the Republican Party has not?
There were issues made about Cheney's heart.
But Cheney had a heart attack. He had multiple heart attacks, and he's continued to have heart attacks.
So you're saying because it factually happened and it wasn't just
same thing about John McCain. Well, people said the same thing about John McCain in 2008. John McCain's old. Look who his VP candidate's going to be, and that's where the Sarah Palin thing just exploded when it came to independents and Democrats going after that Republican ticket in 2008. John McCain's old. He's a veteran, and if something happens to him, we're going to have Sarah Palin from Alaska.
Okay, well, I want to stay on this focus of health, but let's slightly shift gears for a minute to the healthcare debate. Now, on Friday, Kantar Media reported that $418 million have been spent on campaign ads against Obamacare since 2010. And what's more, negative ads spent 15 times more than positive ones. So is the negative campaigning, Lenny, even worth it on a law that has already been enacted and really probably isn't going to go away?
You know, there's two sides to that argument. I've always said that Obamacare will eventually become Clinton care or Christie care or something along those lines. With these negative ads out there, there's always a chance to modify this law to make it something that's actually practical, working, efficient, and affordable for the American people. The way this law is right now, it scares businesses. It's not been effective across the country, so something has to change. So if these ads are going to lead to that end, I say it will be effective. But again, we'll have to see what these 2014 elections bring us and what president ends up going into the White House starting in January 2017.
But is that the only thing they have to hinge on? Because, Tara, given all this negative spending, will Democrats then distance themselves from Obamacare in the upcoming midterm elections?
Well, we already see a lot of Democrats running on health care reform. There's a congresswoman in the state of Kentucky who's currently running on Kentucky Connect, which is the state exchange for the Affordable Care Act. Now, here's the problem, though, with these negative ads. Despite the fact that Republicans have spent this record amount of money, not only just attacking the ad, but actually lying about the Affordable Care Act.
Lying in what sense?
Saying death panels, that people will have to go before death panels. That's simply not true. And it's dangerous to tell people who need health care that they could potentially have their grandmother or something go before a death panel as a way to discourage them from signing up for something that they need. We have people in this country who go to the emergency room for treatment, spend so much money in the emergency room for treatment because they don't have health care, and they go bankrupt. 60% of people in this country file bankruptcy because of medical bills. That is a statement of fact. And we also have people who are not getting the treatment that they need because they don't go at all. There was a woman in Florida who recently died. It was in the local papers. So for the Republicans have gone and run this campaign against this Affordable Care Act, and if they really believe that the act was so bad, run ads that attack the merits of the ad. Don't run ads that make things up.
Okay, well,
they've exactly done that. They have talked about premiums going up and access being cut. We've talked about this stuff for years now. And again, let's not forget, this bill was not passed by a single Republican. This was a highly partisan bill that had to go.
Signed up for it, though, Lenny. So given that millions of people have signed up, regardless of how you feel
that
about
already
the
had
numbers,
insurance, Morgan.
Okay, but they're
already had
still
insurance.
talking
That's
millions
the
of people with new people who've signed up for this law. So is that all the Republicans have to hinge on going into these midterms?
Well, they have to look at the fact that, number one, that millions of these individuals that signed up already had insurance. Many ways they lost their insurance because of the ACA that came into place. Number two, you have to look at the fact that premiums have gone up. Number three, we have to look at the fact that this is scaring businesses from hiring. The number one thing impacting the nation is not Obamacare or the ACA. The number one thing impacting the nation is the poor economy and the jobless recovery.
Okay,
and
I want to pause you. I want to pause you right there because I want to ask you guys another question before we have to go. According to a recent poll, Jeb Bush and Rand Paul are now tied for the lead at 14%. But guys, do you think that Paul's libertarian platform really has any chance of winning over mainstream Republicans? Lenny, I'll go to you to that first.
I think that he has an opportunity to build some momentum, but I think he may run into the same exact thing that his dad ran into, and it'll be very interesting to see how he pivots off of that. When he starts going into foreign policy, if he has some of the similar views that his dad has, he's going to lose steam there, and that's where somebody like a Jeb Bush or others will be able to overtake him once we start getting into these debates.
Tara, you think he's enough to cause the Democrats to break a sweat?
Not at this point, but I think he's going to cause fellow Republicans to break a sweat. I don't think that Rand Paul should be underestimated. He has the support of his father's very ardent base, because his father may not have been mainstream, but he had very enthusiastic supporters. So when you go into caucuses like the Iowa caucus, the Nevada caucus, those require supporters who are really energized, who are out there, who are really supportive of you and you can win caucuses with just a smaller, more enthusiastic support group. And also, not only does he have his father's supporters, but he has also broadened his support. Where you look at the polling currently, he really polls well amongst wide swaths of the Republican Party base.
Perhaps wider than we thought. All right, Tara Dowdell, Democratic strategist in New York, and Lenny McAllister, conservative political commentator in Pittsburgh. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
God bless. Thank you.
Now,